What's going on, everybody? This is Jaden with How to Apple, and welcome back to the Apple Talks Tech podcast. And today I have a special guest. His name is Zachary Duke, and he recently got his last name changed, so I'm surprised I got that right. He just got some adoption things taken care of, and now he's officially in the Duke family. Is that correct, Zach?
Yes, sir.
Nice. So if you can just take a moment and introduce yourself and just kind of not necessarily your whole life story, but just a little background about you and pretty much how we met as well.
Gotcha. So my name is Zach Duke. Zachary is my first name. I go by Zach on all my social media and stuff. I actually got into YouTube and met Jaden through his YouTube channel. I was searching up a video one day and his was actually the first one to pop up. So I checked out his videos and I started making comments on videos and live streams and stuff, and now we're really good friends. I help him out here and there, and we talk about a lot of tech stuff, bounce ideas off of each other, that kind of thing. So a little bit of my life, I did 4 years in the military. That's a big part of my life after I got out of high school. So I have a lot of military background, and I understand a lot of politics and different stuff like that. But also growing up through my entire life, I've loved technology, always have and always will. Everything about it, the advancement, how it helps society, and even how it hurts society. So with that, that's kind of how me and Jaden linked up, is being able to talk about different kind of tech stuff, specifically Apple and his channel. And he knows that I have a Samsung phone that I use back and forth. So We love to go back and forth on that and talk about that kind of thing. So that's just a little bit about me and where I came from and what I like to do.
Yeah, man. I think one of the main things that kind of caught you by surprise, Zach, was that I actually replied whenever you would leave comments and stuff.
Exactly.
I think you were and honestly, I get that a lot, that, man, this YouTuber actually replies. And I think that's mainly because I don't have like a humongous channel, so it's a little easy to reply to all the DMs and all the comments and stuff like that. I'm not sure how much time I would be able to devote to that once I get, an insanely amount of subscribers, and that day will come. But Zach also was the first one, and I say this all the time, but you were the first one to buy the merch off my channel, which I have posted on my Instagram. So I do appreciate that.
I'm actually wearing the white hoodie right now.
Oh, really? And that's funny because right now the way we're recording this, he's recording on his end and I'm recording on my end, and we're kind of talking on the phone right now through just normal, I guess, whatever, FaceTime audio or whatever we're doing. So I can't really see him at the moment, but I will edit this as you guys are looking at right now. So, but there was something, of course, interesting with what you just said, that we all know, well, I know at least, you have a Samsung. And okay, for what do you use for a computer?
So I actually have an HP laptop. So I don't have a MacBook or anything like that.
So that is a Windows machine. You have an Android phone, and you also use an iPad. An iPhone.
Well, I do have an iPad too.
Oh, okay. So you have an iPad. So that was one of the main things, and you also switched between your iPhone and your Samsung.
Yes, quite often actually.
And that's something I just am really confused about. Like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you use iPhone, have all your files and stuff like that, your photos and everything, and then you go to an Android phone? Do you use everything through like Google Drive? Explain to us how you do that, and maybe other people that have multiple platforms can relate to you.
Definitely. So with my Galaxy and my iPhone being different, obviously I have all the photos and stuff that I take, because I'm also a photographer. I love doing photography. All of my photos that I take, I usually edit on my iPhone and take them on my iPhone. And then if I need to, like say I'm switching over to my Galaxy for a few days or a week or whatever, I can send those over. I usually use Google Photos on my iPhone as well. So it backs all that up together so that I have access to all those photos and stuff. And I use Lightroom to edit on my iPhone. And occasionally I'll edit on my Android phone with little different apps like Snapseed and stuff like that. So I have a lot of different programs and stuff that are cross-platform. Actually, everything that I use is cross-platform. Google being the biggest. All my email addresses and stuff are synced through Google, so that's a lot easier to do and handle. Other than that, a lot of it is just like simple. The biggest thing to get used to though is my friends that have iPhones. don't like it when I go back to my Android phone because I don't use
Because
iMessage
the
on
green
Android.
bubbles.
Exactly. All my friends hate that they're not using that blue bubble that everybody loves so much.
For real.
So that's really the hardest part, and that's super easy for me to get over. Maybe not for everybody else, but for me it's super easy to get over because I'm just so used to texting, because I always look at it like this: if I want to talk to you, I'm going to talk to you however I can.
Yeah.
So for some of my friends, they prefer Apple and iPhone, and that's great. But I love different things about Google and Android that iPhone doesn't have. So
And well,
it's a little bit of both.
now what do you mean by that?
Go ahead.
Are you mean like what are some perks or pros that Android has over iPhone?
I love the use of the word pro there because that's kind of a weird thing in tech right now. But
Yeah.
with Android, and specifically I have a Galaxy S10, I love the customization that I can do. It's almost entirely unlimited. The amount of icon packs and launchers, if you guys know about that kind of stuff. I love messing with that kind of stuff, tinkering, changing things the way the phone works and making things a little bit faster. Sometimes changing the animations of swiping between home screens, or the different multitask windows and stuff you can change. There's a lot of different stuff that Android is able to adapt that iPhone necessarily doesn't. And I also love the simplicity of iPhone. That's why I love iPhone. It's easy of use, and the way that the ecosystem works is like no other.
Yeah. On that note, we're gonna take a quick break, but we will definitely dive back into the ecosystem. And honestly, I want to get your take on what other companies. Let's just take a break real quick, and we'll be right back. All right, so welcome back. I had to get my little coffee break. You know how I do. So we left off talking about what you thought the pros were with the Android as opposed to iPhone. You also brought up iPhone, the things you like about it, such as iMessage and the simplicity of it. And you also brought up the ecosystem. Now, before we dive further into the ecosystem, of course, you mentioned customization for the Samsung, and you said it's pretty much unlimited. Do you feel like, and obviously it is, but I've thought that maybe customization might have been something of like the old, like back in the day we used to jailbreak because we wanted that customization, us iPhone users. And eventually it kind of just died out, and you just kind of get used to, everything. So do people still really get into tweaks and theme packs and all that kind of stuff? Do people still do that?
There's a community for it, I'll say that.
Really?
A lot of you guys, I'm sure, have heard about Reddit. There's a lot of different threads and communities on Reddit that are really big into that stuff, and it's starting to get, ironically, so as our age group matured and got older, we started realizing that we didn't need to do all the little tweaks and stuff, that we were kind of happy with things were on the iPhone, specifically with jailbreaking back then, because it was really big when I was in junior high and high school. A lot of people thought they were super cool, and they could do all these kind of tweaks and stuff. Which
you used to be cool because you can copy and paste.
Exactly.
When everybody else couldn't.
That's what I'm saying. So it was a really big deal for us back then. Now coming up that we're a little bit older and more mature, and technology has advanced so much, it's not really that necessary anymore. The biggest thing I remember when I was younger, before I actually had my first iPhone, I had an iPod Touch. And I jailbroke it and then actually took it off because I realized I was getting a phone, and that was kind of so as I was getting into iPhones, I actually had an iPod Touch, so I kind of knew how Apple already worked at the time. So jailbreaking was a little bit new to me, and then once I got my iPhone, I started jailbreaking, learning all tweaks and stuff like that. So that was really cool to experience from that as a young person. And now as we're getting older, I don't necessarily need that as much anymore. But I also do have the best of both worlds with Galaxy and with Apple.
Yeah.
So the tweaks aren't really as much anymore, but there's still a community out there if you're really looking into it.
And I think that's true, because even some of the subscribers on my YouTube channel have wanted me to do jailbreak videos, and I'm like, bruh, jailbreak is its own beast. Like, I would have to literally make a whole channel devoted to just jailbreak tweaks and all the new updates to come out. Cydia, which I think they don't even use Cydia anymore, right? It's like, is it still Cydia?
I think there's still some Cydia stuff out there, but I think there's a new, it's all rolling over because of the different, so the issue with jailbreaking was that every time iOS released a new update, it was basically developers had to find a new way to jailbreak it.
Yeah.
And there's a different, I don't want to go in too much detail, but there's an untethered jailbreak and a tethered jailbreak.
Tethered, yeah.
So it's a little bit more complicated to where if you were to turn off your phone, like the battery died or something, it would unjailbreak your phone and you'd have to redo the whole thing again. So there's two different types. Yeah, it's crazy. So
yeah, I mean,
it's a system and everything.
I remember that stuff, and like honestly, man, dog, everybody that's watching this on YouTube, you're gonna have to smash the like and leave a comment below if you think Zach should start a YouTube channel, because he's very well versed on tech. So I don't know why he's not making videos and stuff about tech. But yeah, I remember the tethered and the untethered, and you couldn't restart your phone, all that kind of mess.
Yeah, it was crazy. You couldn't let your phone die because you'd have to redo the whole thing.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's crazy.
But we used to do it because we wanted that jailbreak.
Oh yeah,
we wanted the jailbreak. But diving into the ecosystem of Apple. Now we brought that up. So of course every Apple lover, Mac user, if you have multiple devices of Apple, we all love the ecosystem. Now, people that only have an iPhone, you might not really see the benefits of this, because the main benefit of the ecosystem is to make all your devices just work seamlessly together. So, what do you think? If that's the main thing, you ask a lot of Apple users, hey, what is it about Apple? They normally go to the ecosystem. Now, of course, their stuff is just hot. You know, that stuff looks good. The iPad,
of course.
The iPad, you got to you got to have a little alone time when you pull out the box, clean it off, then you figure out what you get to do with it. You know, the new features.
Exactly.
But if the main thing is the ecosystem, doesn't it seem like the other companies should just bring competition to the ecosystem itself, of Apple's ecosystem, to start winning over some of those users? And if that's the case, I have not seen anybody honestly get up to par when it comes to the ecosystem of Apple, and I really don't feel like people are trying. So what do you think about that? How do you think other companies compare to Apple's ecosystem, and what do you think they would really need to do to match?
So like you said, there's not any other companies out there that are pushing this really hard. And I think there's a reason for that. And from a business perspective, when I look at it, I see Apple, and this is the new Apple after Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
it's more of like, it's a huge difference. They're more focused on putting an iPhone itself in your pocket rather than putting the latest and greatest iPhone. So they're trying to make it better, software stuff.
I like that.
And the way that they do their services, they're trying to get that to where they just have it based on services, and you're using an iPhone, whether it's the iPhone XR from a year or two ago, or whether it's an iPhone 8 from a couple years ago, They want to have an iPhone because when you have an iPhone, you have their services, whether it's iCloud, Apple TV, Apple Music, all that kind of stuff. They're pulling in revenue from that. From a business perspective, that makes a ton of money. And that's where it's at. That's what they're focusing on. Now, as far as, let's say, Samsung, for example, with the Galaxy series, they have the Galaxy Buds. They've got a couple other things going for them, but they're not focused on specifically putting out a phone with an ecosystem. And I think the reason for that is because they're pulling, as a whole, Samsung is pulling in a lot more revenue from other different outsources rather than just phones.
And that's true.
It's a big part of it. So their financials are a lot more outspread because, I don't know if all you guys know this, but Samsung makes almost all of the screens for smartphones because they have some of the best technology for that. So Samsung also makes different stuff like TVs, refrigerators, like whatever you can imagine. So their profits are a lot more in depth and enriched in other different communities rather than just tech.
That is very true, man. You hit it you hit it, bro. You hit it. That's true. And really, you got to think about that when it comes to the business perspective. And does it really benefit Samsung to devote all of that time into services? Because honestly, with Android being a open platform, there's not a lot of Samsung specific stuff you run. Like Apple is very Apple specific, and then you got, of course, you do have Google. They have the Pixels and everything like that, and then you got all the other different brands of Android phones. But when you look at Android as an operating system, the software behind it is kind of hard to lock people into a Samsung, Samsung revenue. As Apple, they can do it because it's Apple Music. They control their own software. They control their hardware. They control everything. So that's definitely a good take on that. And I never really thought about that when you mentioned how Samsung does make everything else and they're not really worried about it, as opposed to Apple. They don't make all of these different smart home appliances and everything. They do make some, but not much. And you're right about that. They are trying to get everybody on an Apple device, because as long as you're on an Apple device, you get access to the App Store, you get access to everything else that gives them revenue.
Exactly.
And I don't think it's necessarily bad that they're making these phones so good, because before they was like, well, if they make these phones so good, people are going to keep it and not want to upgrade. But honestly, I think Apple, I think Apple has really gotten onto that and realized that, hey, these phones, we can't keep relying on selling a new phone every year. We have to have some other financial backbone. Let's take a little break because I think our call just got disconnected. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, my phone totally just hung up on him.
Well, anyway, we will go ahead and take a break, and we'll get back to this because I'm really interested in this ecosystem thing and just the future of tech as far as Apple goes, because I do think that Apple realizes that, hey, these phones can only get good, or so much. How do you say that? They can only get
so much better.
Yeah, like what new features can you really bring to a phone as far as hardware and stuff that's going to make people want to buy the next phone? But if they shift their core to more services, then no matter what kind of phone you have in your hand, as long as it's an iPhone, you still partake in those services and it doesn't really hurt them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So when we get back from the break, let's talk more about that, and we'll just expound on this whole Android versus Apple thing. Be right back. All right, guys, so welcome back, and we apologize for those little technical difficulties. Unfortunately, I think he was on an iPhone when that happened, so hey, maybe not upgraded to iOS 13. Maybe you're on a beta. I don't know. Ooh. But we were talking about the ecosystem and talking about Apple moving more over to services as opposed to just trying to sell hardware, which when it comes to the Mac Pro, they're definitely trying to make some coin off that. That ain't software at all. They trying to make coin straight off of hardware.
Exactly.
But looking at Google, I know we've been talking about Samsung a lot, but looking at Google, in my opinion, I feel like Google at one point, maybe not so much now, I'm not really that into Google. However, if I was to go over to Android, I probably would use Google because I like I guess Apple has me tainted. Like, I want a software that's going to be from the company. Like, you know what I mean? So I feel like Google's the cleanest Android experience you're going to get. And unfortunately, I think the other Android devices don't even get the latest update until like months later or something, right?
Yeah, so there was an issue that I had with that. It wasn't just me. It was across the board with the Galaxy S10 series and the Note series. They released Android 10 back when the Google Pixel 3a, I believe, came out. That was the first phone to get Android 10, which is the new Android operating system. That was the first phone to get it, but they hadn't released it to other devices yet. I don't know what the holdup was. I don't know if that was a plan that Samsung had, but either way, a lot of us Android users were pretty jealous. So that was an issue.
I think that's like normal, actually, because I think that's been a problem for a while. I mean, on any device that's not Android, not Google, they don't get the upgrade right away because these other companies have to get it. They have to make sure it's compatible with all their stuff. Then they have to load up all their little softwares that they want. Make sure all their proprietary softwares work on these new operating systems. You know what I mean? Just like developers have to test their apps whenever Apple gives a new operating system. Pretty much Samsung and all these people have to make sure all their proprietary stuff works on these things. So it's going to be a lag, and that I would not like. I would not like that at all.
It's kind of upsetting a little bit, but in all honesty, I get it from a developer's perspective. You have to make sure that all of your apps and everything that you have works great with this new system, and if not, figure out what problems that you have and fix those errors. But at the same time, I don't know if you know this, but I used to have a Pixel 2.
I didn't know that.
That was one of the best cameras that I've ever had on a smartphone.
I've heard.
It does not compare. I have the iPhone 11 right now, and I absolutely fell in love with this phone entirely. But the Pixel 2 would definitely be a second. But I haven't used a Pixel 3 and 3A, so I can't really speak on the other Pixel phones. But the Google operating system was almost flawless when I had the Pixel 2. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the way it worked because it was clean, it was simple, yet it was still customizable like I like from the Android perspective. So I really enjoyed the Pixel phone. I just happened to get, I think at the time after the Pixel 2, I couldn't remember what phone I got after that. But I'm pretty sure I went back to an iPhone after that. So it wasn't that much of a big deal, but I did love the Pixel series and the way that Google integrates the Google account and your phone is flawless. There was and the Google Assistant was perfect as well. I couldn't have asked for a better assistant coming from a smartphone.
So it seems like, and honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, maybe it's been years ago, but there was a quick little glimpse of light where I was actually thinking about, hey, maybe I should go to Google, because the Pixel really, I think it actually when the Pixel was coming out, and they were talking about how it's going to be like a pure Google experience and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, man, you know what? A lot of the business people use Google Drive. There's like Google is really growing and everything, and they own YouTube now and all this stuff. So I actually thought about, I was like, man, maybe I could go over to Google and try, but I was trying to replicate the same ecosystem feel from Apple. And I feel like Google was probably the closest to getting to where Apple is, and I feel like they were going because they had the Nexus tablet.
They had the Nexus system.
Yeah, the Pixel, and then you had the Chromebooks. That was where my breaking point was with the Chromebooks. If they would have if they could make an Android operating system for the computer, and actually it'd be a full blown like operating system, not like Chrome on a laptop, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then I might have switched that day, honestly, because I was thinking about it. But because the Chromebook was just not up to par, in my opinion, not compared to a Mac, obviously, or even a PC.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I didn't switch. So I feel like Google's probably the closest to being able to replicate the ecosystem of Apple. But I don't really know if they're going to do that. I don't feel like the Chromebooks have made much advancements from when I first remember them.
Honestly, in my opinion, the Chromebook is hitting the targeted market.
Really?
And I say that because, yes, so from what I see and from what I understand, the Chromebook was meant for people who aren't doing in-depth stuff with their computer. Someone who is just, for instance, a college student. For someone who's just using the internet to surf and, find out more information, to typing in a Word document. That was something that they kind of simplified in a way. So I think that was more geared towards, for instance, hey, my 18-year-old kid is going off to college. They're going to need a laptop, to do all their stuff with. I think that was what their target market was, and if it was, I think they hit it on the dot.
Well, that's still going to try to, in my opinion, that's still trying to compete with Macs, because really everybody wants a Mac if you're going to college. Like,
that's true. But you got to think that's the price range that a lot of people, especially kids who are having to go to college, they're not able to afford that because they're already going to be in debt from school. Typically, it's not something that's quite reasonable unless it's like a gift or something like they get from family or parents or friends. So that's if you're looking for something just basic and simple, I think the Chromebook is a great way to go. Even for younger kids, like in junior high and high school, who need to study and do stuff like that, I think that's a great option for parents with younger kids. But as far as like when you're coming into the adult world and using for business and multiple things like that, I definitely think the MacBook and Apple series is a better way to go.
Yeah, and maybe okay, so maybe the Chromebook is more like, well, not necessarily an iPad, but it does, like you said, excuse me, there is a niche market for it. And
Exactly.
maybe Google needs to come out with a full-blown computer for what we call the pro users, or people that are going to do a little more with their computers than a 45-year-old or a 50-year-old would do with their computers.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if they're gonna come into that market and try to compete with Apple as far as ecosystems go, that's gonna be a big deal breaker right there. Is whether or not they can come out with a pro type computer,
Yeah.
or even a iPad type. In my opinion, the iPad is unbeatable. I really don't think
Really?
anybody can compete with a tablet like that. I mean, I've heard very few people that like the Samsung tablets because there's not.
I've heard the Surface is pretty nice.
That's very true, but it doesn't. From what I understand, it isn't ease of use like like Apple is. Apple, you can send things back and forth between your devices with very limited problems, hardly ever, if anything.
Everything just works together.
So the
We know
issue
that.
with that is, yes, you can have a Galaxy and a Microsoft device, but it's just sending it through an email like any other device would, like I would do from an iPhone to an Android phone. It's the same premise there. So there's there's not a lot of advantages as far as an ecosystem pulling those two devices together.
Yeah, nah. If Windows Mobile would have kicked off, then that would have been the
Yes.
that would have been the main thing for Apple. Like Apple probably would be behind. I mean, because as far as the desktop world, Apple's still behind. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, contractors, government especially. Everybody uses Windows generally. But if the mobile, I actually liked the, what was it, the Lumia, whatever it was.
the Lumia 850.
Yeah,
or something
it had the
like
Windows on it, and I loved my Zune, bruh. I don't know. Did you ever have a Zune?
The Zune, yes.
Yes, man.
Oh
I
my
loved
goodness.
the Zune. And I even had an iPad. I had an iPhone and a Zune, and I still like listening to my Zune. So I think when Microsoft had an opportunity, but because the App Store on the Windows phone was just not up to par, because Google and Apple already had plenty of apps in their App Store. When the when the Windows Mobile came out, it was too far behind. I mean, you didn't really have. I think you barely had Skype. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
things that
and even then,
yeah.
Skype was pretty sketchy for a couple years there.
For
And
real.
They kind of I'm glad they updated their policy and fixed a bunch of stuff security wise.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's.
But what's pretty cool is that I think Windows could have had a leg up had that Windows phone and the operating system worked better together. I think they might have even had a little bit of a jump start on Apple on that, had they took advantage of that. But
Exactly.
you also have to think of, from a business perspective right now, how many people have an Xbox console? That Xbox console runs off of Microsoft.
Yeah, it does.
So that login information and all that stuff you have, all those games and stuff that they're buying, that goes to Microsoft revenue as well. So
True.
Microsoft is also, like I said with Samsung, pulling in a lot more revenue,
Yeah.
rather than Apple, that is based off of this ecosystem that they covet and enjoy so much, that we all covet and enjoy.
Yeah.
So I think for anyone to come up and step up to the plate with Apple, it's going to have to be a really big move and a really good swing.
That's true. That is very true. I guess this is the last question. Last thing we'll talk about. Matter of fact, let's take a quick break again, and we'll dive into something. What I want to ask you is, so we realized that you gotta hit things at the right moment. Obviously, Apple and Google hit the App Store and the whole apps thing at the right time.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody were
Perfect.
to come up and try to have another app store, it's just going to be so far behind, because it's not going to have a lot of developers on it. They're just not going to have all the apps that everybody else has, Apple and Google has. So that opportunity's missed. It seems like Google missed the opportunity with the pro users. Like, that probably helped a lot of people like myself back from switching over to Google. So what do you think, and this is something we can think about over the break, but what do you think is the next, hey, you know what, a tech company needs to hit this right? Like, this is a gold mine right now. If they hit this and do it right, then they'll be good in the end. And then if anybody else comes back and try to hit it later, they're kind of too late. Like, just think about that for a minute, and we'll take a break, and maybe you can come up with some good answers, and maybe I might have some as well. So be right back. All right, so welcome back. You know how I do. I had to, get my little coffee break in as we normally do. So the question I posed before the break was, so we see that these companies are missing the mark. Some of them. I mean, we have some that hit it and they do well and they fly, they fly with it. And then when other companies try to come in, it's just like already gone. So the question was, what do you think now? What do you think is that thing that people need to hop on, or they're going to miss the mark? And then people might try to come in later and they're going to miss the market. You understand what I'm saying? What do you think the next hot topic or the next hot tech is going to be that people need to grab and do it right? And if you would like, I can try to start that off. I have a couple things now, and it's funny because during the break I couldn't think of anything, but I had lost my train of thought. But okay, so we do have the folding phones, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That still has not really been done right. I mean, of course you have the Samsung, but I don't feel like it's really kicked off yet. And I feel like it might be the price point. I'm not sure, but I think it's like $2,000, ain't it?
Yeah, for the Galaxy Fold.
But speaking of the Fold, I've noticed that Motorola, the Razr, have you seen that new one, the Fold one?
It is beautiful.
That thing is nice. And honestly, like, if anybody else would have came with a flip phone, I would have looked at them like, okay, that's stupid. But Motorola, I am not lying. That thing looks like, yo, this is pretty hot, actually. Like,
it looks really nice.
Yeah, and I wonder if for those people that, because I mean, it flips into a normal phone. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that's their leg, like if that's their like, hey, that's a niche market, and it is the Fold. It's utilizing that folding technology. Excuse me, it's utilizing that folding technology, but it's in the form of a flip phone, and it really is like nostalgia. Like, it brings back those
That's
memories.
Exactly
of, man,
what I was gonna say.
The Motorola Razr, because I used to kill that mess when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. So maybe that might be the next big thing that there's an opportunity there, and then once somebody already does it, anybody else that kind of comes up might be like, oh yeah, this is just another flip phone, another flip fold phone. What do you think about that?
Honestly, I think the flip phone is a really interesting piece of tech. It's something that we haven't really, nobody thought of.
Nobody would ever thought we would say that in 2020.
Not at all, phone. Ever. No. So, because we joke as my generation, we joke about people having flip phones. Like, you're lesser than anybody because you don't have a smartphone. So for someone to recreate something that has so much value to my generation and a little bit older than me is crazy. It's the nostalgia of it is perfect. It hits the spot, it's what people like us would want in something that's old yet still new with technology.
Exactly.
The only crazy part is, like you said, the price, man. That's what it's going to be.
Now actually, I don't know the price of the Motorola. I can look that up real quick. I know the price for the Samsung Fold is like ridiculous. That's like crazy. But the Moto Razr, let's look it up real quick.
So I know the Fold is $2,000, like everybody's been talking about, $2,000. But I don't know what the Razr is.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to look that up real quick.
I know it's pretty expensive comparatively, considering what the Motorola Razr was back then. It's gonna be quite the upgrade.
And I mean, it looks really nice, and maybe this is the okay, I see a whole bunch of pictures. They're trying to like weigh me with some phone porn, but I don't see a price. So anyway, I guess we'll check that out. But maybe this is the way, because honestly, Motorola has just been left in the dust, because I mean, you did have the Droid, and people liked the Droid, the Motorola Droid. I think that was like the first really big hit Android phone, wasn't it? The Droid X or whatever.
Yeah, it was one of the bigger ones because they had a whole Droid line, is what they called it. Different types of Droid phones, which was kind of like a runoff of Android, is why they called it that. And it worked really well for a few generations of phones, and then they just kind of dropped off, and nobody really heard from them since.
Yeah.
So I don't
And
know if they just missed the mark and the technology wasn't there yet, or if people weren't ready. I don't know.
maybe I just think they couldn't keep up with Samsung. Samsung was just dominating that market, and they were really the flagship Android phones, honestly, once the Droid series kind of just died out. But I do think this could be the next way for Motorola to get back in there, tapping into their success for the from the Razr.
Oh yeah, and I think that's the perfect market. If that was their goal, to get back into the industry and to catch back up, I think that's what they had to do. But honestly, man, I think the price point, because I know it's a little bit more expensive. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Yeah, I can't see it.
But it is a little bit more expensive on one end, and it's only through one carrier. I remember that as I was doing some research. So that makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if that's good, in my opinion.
Well, I think they did that with the Fold, didn't they? I mean, you could buy it outright for the $2,000, but I think if you were gonna finance it, I think you had to do it through one company.
I know AT&T has it because I went in there and they have it on display.
Oh
so
wow!
I'm not sure if Verizon has it, but I'm looking. It looking like foldable $1,500 Motorola Razr. So maybe it's $1,500. But
I mean, yeah,
maybe this could be the next wave. Like maybe all phones might end up. I mean, can you imagine a foldable iPhone? And people
there
were trying
is a video going around. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, there's a video going around. It's with this super nice car in the background, and they got like a foldable type iPhone. It looks, for the techie inside of me, I got really excited. But I also think that it's too soon. I don't think society is ready for that. And I think the basis of that, my thought process is because of the price. So you're gonna have to. They have to make that phone expensive to cover the screens and all that kind of stuff, the technology it needs. However, society itself is not ready to pay that price for a cell phone. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there. We're already at like $1,200 for a second iPhone 11 Pro Max.
Yeah, so we're doing it big, but man, it's gonna be pretty rough for companies coming out with foldable phones and stuff like that. But I really hope that if that's the next industry that phone companies need to hop on, then I hope that these companies hop on it real quick and make it what it could be.
Yeah, because the competition is going to make it cheaper. I mean, already the Samsung Fold is already, beat by the Razr because it's cheaper.
Oh yeah.
But I do think just the concept of that folding, when it's not horizontal, folding vertically. Or I guess it's vertically.
Yeah, it's vertical.
Yeah, so that way, everybody was trying to figure out how to fold like a book, and folding that way, like more like a laptop. That's like crucial, and I think maybe one day that might be the wave, because that gives you a small form factor when it's closed, but when you open it, you have a full phone screen. So
yeah,
I can see this picking up a lot, and I think that is definitely the next thing that people need to hop on, and maybe before they miss it, or it just might be one of them things that becomes standard, and then anybody that gets in, that's just the way they make their phones. But I do think there is a prize spot right there to make a affordable foldable phone done right, because I like the Samsung, but I just don't like the way it feels. I really like that Motorola Razr a lot more. Of course, it doesn't run iOS, so we won't have a problem.
Yeah, that is an issue.
Yeah.
When they can figure out how to run iOS on a Motorola phone, that'll be the end of the days.
Yeah, for real. Well, man, let's go ahead and close it up. We have had a good talk up here. I did not actually expect to go this long, so hope everybody enjoyed it that's listening to the podcast and that is looking on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, which you can find it on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, any podcast player you can think of. Try to look for How to Apple without the E, all one word. See if you can find it, and definitely subscribe and leave a comment below if you guys think that Zach should create a tech channel, because he is so knowledgeable about this stuff and he's just a fun guy to talk to. So Zach, if there's any last words you want to say to everybody, and if you want, maybe, I know you have the thing Chats with Tats. I'm not sure if you're still going on with that or not, but I will post links in the show notes and the descriptions, whatever Zach wants me to post, on where you guys can find him and talk to him and ask him tech questions or whatever. So if there's any last words you have, Zach, we'll go ahead and close it out.
All right, Jaden, I just want to say thank you for having me on again.
No problem.
We've become really great friends since we met and since we started talking, so I really do deeply appreciate it. I love the connection that we have as friends, and I love that we can get on the phone and talk for so long and entertain everybody on the internet. But guys, thank you for listening. Really, if you don't know who Jaden is, if you haven't watched his videos before, this is your first time seeing him, please go check him out. Look at his videos, give it some thought. He's definitely very knowledgeable in what he does. He loves helping people just as much as I do. And with that, Jaden will have all of my links and stuff in the description for what my YouTube channel, my Twitter, all that kind of stuff, so you guys can contact me if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, if you want to just talk, bro, I'm here. I got anybody who needs to talk. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening to my smart self-talk and listening to Jaden joke. So thank you guys for everything.
Yep, that's right. All right, man, we'll close this out, and guys, catch you in the next episode. Peace. My breath slows, but my heart keeps running.